Well, good morning. Welcome to Grandpa's Workshop. I'm going to be showing you a few basic electrical skills and for wiring in my little shop here today. Some examples may be on model aeroplanes, some may be on general tools for automotive, but one way or another it's going to be some old school skills. So we're going to start off this morning with some actual soldering and shrink wrapping. Just to make sure you're absolutely clear on how to do this. Tools are available about everywhere around Topeka most of the time. I got my Weller soldering gun actually from Sears when it was opened, but they're still available online. They're very good because they're instant and they create a lot of heat quickly for fairly big joints. But you're going to see this as we go. So here we go. I'm going to show you what we're doing. Okay, here we are again. This is my Weller soldering gun. It's a pretty heavy duty piece of equipment and it's fairly dated nowadays. Don't see that many around. If you see one at a garage sale or anything, buy it because they're absolutely awesome. The tip here is just a piece of copper wire, and as you may have seen on the video earlier, you do have to actually tin the tip of this thing, and it means putting a little bit of solder on the tip, otherwise the tip burns out really quickly. When you squeeze the trigger, the light comes on to show you what you're actually working on, and within a few seconds this thing will melt solder at an extreme rate. Now don't forget, it will burn you. This thing is very hot. What we're going to actually work on today is going to be a model aeroplane. But it's really the only thing in the shop at the moment that needs soldering, so it's kind of perfect for that. What it is a conversion I've done. I don't know if you can see this thing. I've actually fitted a video camera in the front of the nose of this thing, and the wiring goes through into the little canopy here, which comes off with the antenna, and inside it is a little video transmitter. Now the idea, obviously, the intention is to actually fly the aircraft around the area here when I have a little spare time and watch from the pilot's point of view. Obviously when I do this I have a second person watching to make sure I don't go over someone's garden. I have to wire in the power which comes out of here, which is anything from 36 volts all the way down to 5 volts. Into the wiring here that powers the radio, the motor, all the flaps and the batteries. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend the wires first of all on the radio transmitter, and it's going to mean either an act of faith of cutting off this little connector here, or wiring it in a slightly different way. Quick rundown of the tools that you'd end up using for this kind of job. First thing is I'd use this lead based solder. I actually like lead based because it works a little better and it sticks way better. It's always, you can always tell the difference when you actually heat this stuff up because it's shiny when it actually sets on whatever you're soldering, whereas the other stuff, which is zinc and some kind of other alloy, it does dry kind of opaque. With this really odd dull surface. This is better. Unfortunately this is around about 20 bucks worth here, but it does last me a year, possibly, maybe a little more, and I do quite a lot of soldering on electrical stuff on cars, motorcycles, airplanes, grandkids, toys, and that kind of thing. It's got a rosin core, which is the stuff that comes out of the trees. It's kind of like a sap. The core actually burns when it actually heats up to a certain degree and creates smoke. So it's always a good idea to have a fan blowing nearby to blow the smoke away from you. I've never really had any adverse effects from it when I have breathed it in, but it does stink, so it's kind of nasty. This is the good stuff anyway. Firepower is what I use, and I get this usually from O'Reilly's or somewhere like that locally. There's one or two different kinds of wire strippers that you can buy. These are your standard ones. They come in the little repair kits when you get things like crimp terminals and things personally, I don't think they're very good. They're okay, but they're not really very good. This one was actually made by Circuit Alert, which is like a subsidiary, I think, of Mac Tools. It's made in Milwaukee, made by a company called Gardner Bender, and I like these. They came from O'Reilly's, and I think I paid something like $15 for them. Yeah, tools are expensive, but these have never gone wrong, and they're absolutely awesome for all different sizes of wire. I'm going to show you how they work as we go. These are your traditional side cutters, also known in the United States as dikes. I still have no idea really why they're called dikes. I'm presuming that if you're working in a dike and doing barbed wire, this kind of thing, they're good for cutting. They have side cutting blades. Really kind of good for cutting through all kinds of wires. Snip. I've even have an enormous pair of these that will cut through self-tapping screws. But obviously if you're doing that kind of thing, you need safety glasses. The other thing I use a lot are my little tiny needle nose pliers, and I have these in different lengths for reaching into inaccessible areas under car dashboards, inside models and whatever. Just really kind of cool little tools. This particular pair are Craftsman ones. You have to get those online now. I'm going to be using for testing a LiPo battery. This is lithium polymer. Lets a lot of power out in one go. This, believe it or not, is a 12.5 volt battery, and it powers most of my model airplanes and things that I like to play with. There is enough power in this thing to just about start a car one time, so it's a powerful little pack. They do tend to swell if you overcharge these, so they have to be used with care and with the right charger. Here's the little cable that I'm going to actually modify. It's one that I previously made up to power something on one of the models for the kids or for me. This end goes into the radio receiver. It's just got a black wire and a red wire. There's a third one that you could possibly put on this, and it's to switch it on and off, signal wire. So what I do with this first of all is I'll measure it to the right length. I'm going to take you off the stand here and see exactly what I'm going to actually do. Here's the radio transmitter. There's the actual TV camera. I've had to wire these into bumpers before, so it's a similar kind of deal. And the cable goes in here. The black wire in this case always goes down. It's a little bit fiddly to get to. But it's going to go to there, and then the length is going to be about here. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to cut the wire off to the right length with my side cutters. I'll put you back on the stand here for now, and I'll then use the side cutters to just clip in between the wires on the first probably couple of millimeters and separate the two wires, because what I don't want to happen is what just happened. I don't want it to actually split out of the casing. So I've overcut this very slightly. I'm going to cut it to the right length and cut off any excess plastic. Pull it to the same length as this one. And then I'll actually use my wire strippers on this, because I tend to destroy the wire otherwise. There's different gauges of wire that you can strip in here, from tiny, 22 gauge, all the way up to 10 gauge. It seems like the thinner the wire is, the higher the gauge number is. So this would be probably around about an 18 gauge wire. Put it inside the machine, and if it doesn't work, you go to the next one. And then maybe the next one again, and it exposes the wire. This is around about 22 gauge, very small, and I always twist the wires up, as you can see, like this. Now I'm ready to actually put some solder on the wires here, otherwise they don't tend to solder to other wires very easily. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my little helper. I'll show you this in just a second. This is my little helper. These are two magnets with little alligator clips on, and they clip onto a central piece, and there's another magnet on the inside here. Very useful for holding two wires. I usually bolt them to either clamp it to a vise or something that's fairly heavy. Here's my Weller soldering gun, and there's the solder. Now what I'll do to start with is I'll actually tin the wires. I'm going to end up bringing the camera a little closer to the bench so you can actually see what's going on. I'm going to use the soldering gun here. I just move it there. I'm going to heat the gun. We'll also heat the wiring and just smear a little bit of this solder on the wire. Don't know if you can actually see that there. There's no some on there. This kind of saves me a lot of struggling when I'm actually trying to solder these wires up. This machine only takes a second to heat up. There, that's the solder joint. Always put this down somewhere where it's not going to catch fire or anything. Okay, next thing is to trim up the actual battery wire. We're going to cut it off here. Some of this wire is waste, and I'll use the strippers again. As I said, it's 22 gauge, so it's very easy to strip. I always used to do this, funnily enough, with my teeth at one time, and somebody told me if I do it too often with my teeth I'll end up breaking my teeth, so it's probably not a good idea. Let's make these the same length. There's only two colour wires on this thing, red and black. Obviously you guys know that red is hot, black is not. So what I'm going to do, we'll twist up the wires on this one here, like so. We'll adjust our camera a little bit so you can actually see here. We'll disconnect these ones for the time being and put this one in here. Hopefully that'll stay still enough for you to get a view of what we're doing. We'll break out the solder again, wait for the gun to heat up. Put a little bit of solder on each wire. Now obviously I don't want these wires, when I join these together, to be touching, so otherwise it causes all kinds of problems. There's stuff like this. This is heat shrink tubing. It comes in different sizes, and I buy quite a lot of it because I use quite a lot. The one I use the most in here and for vehicle wiring harnesses is this really thin stuff. It's kind of like a coffee shop tube, I guess, that you'd use for stirring your coffee. And I cut a little length of this stuff off, and I must remember to do this, and this is one of my worst things. I forget to put this stuff on, and I solder it all up and get ready to test it and realise there's no insulation on it. And that's to make sure these don't touch. Now I'm just going to clamp this one, the black one, in my jaws again. Now I'll flip this one around. Oh, this is such a cool little gadget. And all I have to do, I don't know if you can see this, is get the wires close together, heat up the soldering gun again, put a little tiny bit of solder on there. Oop, too much. Put too much on, the insulation won't go over. Make sure it's a good connection. because this has to be electrically good. Oh, this is fiddly, as a lot of this stuff is. There, I think I got a joint on there. Now if I did, I'll try and show you the next piece, which is where we slide this over your joint to cover it up, like so. Hopefully you can see this. Heat up the stuff, and now it's actually shrunk down onto it and it's completely insulated it from the other wire. So we'll just flip it over, do the other side. Mustn't forget to put the stuff on again. As you can see, I nearly forgot. The amount of these that I have actually unsoldered, you would not believe, because I can't seem to do it. Need to have unshaky hands as well. Join it up on there. Get the distance correct. Oh, I'm still a little bit out there. Get the wires so they're just touching. Heat up the soldering gun again. Oh boy, I like this soldering gun. There's much smaller ones you can get, by the way, which are for tiny little jobs. But look at that, perfect first time. Now, obviously this stuff needs practice. And the more of these you do, the easier it gets. Now, let's see, where's my cigarette lighter? There, that's my harness made, with a bit of luck. The only thing to do really now is see if it fits inside the model. I'm going to kind of hold that there. You can see this is the radio transmitter, and these little wires, make sure they go red to red, black to black. Otherwise it could be a little too interesting too soon. Okay, I'm going to run the wire and harness down the bottom here. This wire goes into this thing. I'm going to try using my needle nose pliers to install this. Sometimes you may have to. I've done this on car ECUs as well, where you can't actually get hold of anything and you need needle nose pliers. These little pliers, people in shops tend to use these for undoing nuts and things like that, but it is not a good thing because they're not designed for it. They're just not man enough for the job, as it were. Okay, if I can get this to go in. There, it's gone into the receiver. So the next thing, let's see if we can show this. Here's the battery. I'm going to put the battery in place. This is just a test battery to make sure everything works. This little piece of wiring, I think what we'll end up doing with this is we'll tuck it down inside. Let's see if we can find a screwdriver. There we go. Tuck it down inside there, and in between any straps and harnesses. That's kind of got that all out of the way. Now these big blue connectors will connect everything up. There, it should make a noise. Okay, now we'll look inside and see if our radio is on, and I don't think it is at this point. Hold the button down. And we should have power, but obviously we don't. Let's try that again. Black to the bottom. hold the little button down for 2 seconds. We should have had power, but we don't, unfortunately. So we have an issue. Keep your nose kind of active while you're doing this in case anything happens to it. And first thing you notice with wiring issues is the smoke gets released out of the wires. In this case there's no smell, but I think I have a bad connection somewhere. We'll see. Anyway, here we are. We're about to hook it up. Make sure red is to red and black is to black, otherwise that will cause obvious problems. Now you'll see that the little lights are on. Push the button and it should show green. Now we should be on one particular channel. Here's my headset 3D. Going to turn it on so we can find a channel. Oh, and there we go. Seems to be working. So we can see, there's me showing the camera in. I don't know if you can actually see. There we are. There's me. There's the nose. Seems to be working. So all I'll do now is just tuck the wires down inside, out of the way, and then make sure everything goes back on again as it should. I know this is on model aeroplanes, but soldering is still soldering whether or not it's on a piece of jewellery or it's doing on whatever you want to use it on. Click, and there is the aeroplane. We'll see how long it lasts in the air. My next little video in here is going to be on glues. We're going to talk about glue because we actually use quite a lot of glue in automotive. Quick tour of the shop here just so you can see what I've got hanging up. A lot of model aeroplanes, as you can see, in different states of repair. There's some in the corner there. There's some big ones, some little ones. There's a to-do list on the wall. Tripped over the tripod there, so there you go. There's a few more big ones, little ones, bunch of warbirds. Anyway, we'll see you on the next video and we'll talk to you about glues next time. Bye for now. Grandpa's Workshop out.